Okay guys, today we're going to talk about a different way to display data, and the way we're going to talk about is through a histogram. Okay, so a histogram is a bar graph used to show frequency of data using intervals. So it's a way to show how often data occurs, but we're going to have to use intervals when we do that. So in a histogram, there are no spaces between the bars to show that the data is continuous. When making a histogram, data should be divided into intervals. Each interval should have the same number of values in it. Each bar in a histogram shows the frequency, or how often something occurs. In a histogram, the bars must be the same width. And all that means is that if you have 5 numbers in the first interval, you should have 5 numbers in the second. So the width or the range of data in between the spaces should be the same. Okay, so we're going to have to learn how to create a histogram. Now on an EOG, they're not going to have you create a histogram because obviously our answer choices are multiple choice or they are gridded response, so you can't create one. But in order to pull things from a histogram, you first have to understand how it's created. How is it put together? So step 1 is you have to create intervals. Okay, step 2, you're going to sort the data into each interval. Step 3, you're going to mark the axes, which are the axes, or it's the same as an axis. Axes is plural for the x and y axis. So we're talking about both. Step 4, draw the bars to represent the frequency. And remember, the bars must touch because there are no spaces and be the same width. Okay, and step 5, we're going to label the parts. Okay, now some of these steps we may do in a little different order because, you know, for me, I like to have stuff labeled before I start actually filling in the bars, just so I know what's where. But we'll talk about that once we start creating it down here in the bottom. We're going to use this data here in this table to create our histogram down here. Okay, so it says step 1 is to create the intervals. Well, lucky for us, they have already did that for us. So the intervals are going to be our number of minutes. So we have 0 to 4, 5 to 9, 10 to 14, and 15 to 19. Okay, and if you count the actual numbers in each interval, you have 0, 1, 2, 3, 4. So we have 5 numbers. Then we have 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 5 more numbers. So each interval contains 5 numbers. Okay, so now we want to go through and we want to count or get a frequency of how often the numbers 0 through 4 occur. Okay, so there are 1, 2, 3 numbers between 0 and 4. So it's a frequency of 3. Okay, and now we need to see how many numbers are between 5 and 9. And there are 1, 2, 3, 4, just 4. Okay, so our frequency is 4 for numbers 5 through 9. Okay, now we want to know how many numbers are between 10 and 14. we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Oh, I forgot one. 6. Okay, so there are 6. And lastly, we want to know how many numbers are between 15 and 19. You should have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Okay? And if you notice, I use slashes, circles, boxes, and triangles because you want to use some kind of marking out tool or some way to cross off the values you have used, because we want to make sure that we include everything. Okay? So now we know that there are going to be 4 bars because there are 4 intervals. So we can go ahead on our bar graph and split right here in the bottom it into 4. Okay? And our first interval is going to be 0 to 4. Our second one, 5 to 9. Our third one, 10 to 14, and then 15 to 19. Okay? So now we want to go ahead and create our bars. But before we do so, let's go ahead and label our axes. So down here, our intervals are going to be number of minutes. Okay? And then going up, I'm going to call our frequency. So our frequency will be our y-axis, our vertical axis. I'm going to say this is the number of students because it's the number of minutes to get to school. So I'm going to say our frequency or our number of students. So it's going to be the number of students that take 0 to 4 minutes or 5 to 9 minutes, so on and so forth. Okay? Now, I just need to figure out with the frequency, my highest frequency is 7, so can I go on the y-axis and count by 1, or do I need to count by something different? So there's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. So I can count by 1. So 0 is here. So this will be 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Okay? Now I can go ahead and create the first interval. So 0 to 4 goes up to 3. So I'm going to take my bar graph up to 3. Oh, and I went to 4. I messed up, but it's okay. So this one stops here, okay? And then 5 to 9 goes up to 4. So luckily I didn't mess this up because I have to stay touching, so I needed that line. So this goes up to 4. Okay. 10 to 14 goes up to 6. And then 15 to 19 goes up to 7. Alright, and I'm just going to take my highlighter and color them in so they're a little easier to see. And that's not the prettiest, but you get the idea. Okay? Alright, so when talking about histograms, the only 2 things that we've talked about so far that you're going to be able to pull out of just looking at a histogram are median and mode. Okay? Because when you're asked to do something with a histogram, you're probably only going to be given this part, So you're not going to know, did somebody actually choose 19 or 9 or 0? Okay, now if you're given this chart, of course, we can find the mean and we can find the range, because we know the exact data that were used, or the exact numbers that were used. But if we don't know the exact numbers, there's no way that we can pull that out, okay? So the only thing that we can find, just looking at a histogram, is the median and the mode. So to start with, to find the median, what you have to do is you have to go through and number each spot in the bar graph. So you're going to have to pay close attention to the y-axis and how you numbered. So we numbered by 1, so each of these sections is 1. So it will be 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20. So we have 20 altogether for the frequency, or the number of people who told us how many minutes it takes them to get to school. Okay, so the middle of 20, or 20 divided by 2, would be 10. So that means our median is right here. Okay, now because we're with a histogram, our median and our mode has to be given in intervals. Okay, so I'm going to write that beside median and mode. So we remember that our answer for median and mode has to be intervals. So if we're finding our median, we have 20 people who voted, 20 slots. 20 divided by 2 is 10, so our median is here. So that means the interval our median is in is 10 to 14. So our median would be 10 to 14. Okay? And then mode is the easiest one of them all, because it's just the one that has the highest frequency. So obviously we can see that this one has the highest, so our mode would be 15 to 19. Okay, so that is how you create a histogram. So now we're going to turn over to the back, and we are going to look at our practice, okay? So being that you can look at a histogram and read it, I think number 2 is doable. So we're going to do number 1 together. Okay, so they want us to create a histogram using this data in this chart. So I'm going to create a box like we've seen on the front, so that we can organize the data first, because remember step 1 is to create intervals. So we need to figure out what are our intervals and organize the data so that we can correctly put it onto the histogram. Okay, so this is going to be minutes on homework. Okay, so these are going to be where our intervals will be, the top, and the bottom is going to be our frequency. Okay, so I'm going to do 4 sections. Okay, and if we look, the biggest number in our data is, it looks like 37. Okay, so we need to figure out a way to split this data up. So 37 doesn't divide by 4 evenly, but if we go ahead and say 40 so that we know we include everything, we need 10 values in each interval. So we have to start with 0. So to get 10 values, you would think 0 to 10, but that's not true. We actually have to do 0 to 9, because 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. That's 10 values. Okay? So our next interval would be 10 to 19. Our next one would be 20 to 29. And our last one would be 30 to 39. Okay? So now you go ahead and go through and tell me how many numbers are 0 to 9, 10 to 19, 20 to 29, and 30 to 39. Okay? So I got one number from 0 to 9. I got 7 numbers, 10 to 19. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. I got 10 numbers, 20 to 29. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. And I got 6 numbers, 30 to 39. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Okay. And to be sure we have all of our data, I marked them off based on the color code that I used. And so now to create our histogram, we know that we need 4 bars. So we need to separate into 4. And we know that our intervals are 0 to 9, 10 to 19, 20 to 29, and 30 to 39. Okay? And this is the number of minutes. Okay? So now what I want to do is I need to figure out for my y-axis, how do I need to count? So the biggest number for frequency is 10. So do I have enough to count by 1? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. I don't. So maybe I can count by 2. So if I put 0 here, I should be able to go up in 2. So 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, 12. And that does work. Okay? So now I just need to graph my frequencies. So 0 to 9 has 1. So between 0 and 2 is 1. 10 to 9 has 7. So we're going to go all the way up to 7, which will be in between 6 and 8. 20 to 29 has 10, so we're going to go all the way up to 10. And 30 to 39 has 6, so we're coming back down here to 6. Okay, and I'm going to shade it in again so it's easier to see. Okay, so now I want you to find the median and the mode for this histogram. Okay, for the median, you should have got 20 to 29, and for the mode, you should have gotten 20 to 29. Okay. The only thing that was tricky with this is mode. You can see which one has the most, so 20 to 29 wins. But for median, you have to realize from 0 to 2, you have to count 2. So this would be 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20, 21, 22, 23, 24, because each section is worth 2. So if we took 24 and divided by 2, we get 12. So our median would be right in here. Okay. Which is in the 20 to 29 range. Okay. So that is how you create a histogram from start to finish. So I want you to go ahead and do the problems for number 2 on your own.